Psst. So you're still on the fence about BeamNG's career mode? Maybe my last video had you intrigued but not convinced? Well, buckle up because update 0.34.2 might just be the push you need to finally commit. Hi everyone and welcome back to another BeamNG Drive video. It's been a solid 4 months since my last deep dive into career mode, and let me tell you, BeamNG devs have been putting in the work. Not only have they rolled out on quality of life updates, but we also have major content drop with the Vintage Ventures update. But listen, we're not here to read patch notes. If you like to do that, you can do it in your own time. And instead, let's jump in and experience what's new firsthand. And right away, something feels different. BeamNG's entire UI has been overhauled, and dare I say it, it actually works now. It's faster, smoother, and doesn't lag every time you try to swap a part. Vehicle configuration, slick. Scaling, on point. Responsiveness, finally there. It's almost like the devs saw us all collectively suffering and thought, you know what, maybe we should fix that. And for that, I salute them. Booting up career mode again after 4 months, I almost felt like I was playing a different game. Right from the start, you're welcomed with a new intro screen outlining what to expect. Though, in a classic BeamNG fashion, they reminded us that this is still heavy work in progress. But if it's only a taste of what's coming, yeah, I'm pretty excited. We've got new drift zones, because sideways is always the answer, new missions and challenges, new vehicles, and with that being said, let's just get in our first mission, getting a car. We need something reliable to kick things off, so I went to the Bishop BX series again. It has a decent power to weight ratio, it has a responsive handling, and yeah, it's rear-wheel drive. But listen, I know some of you love your rear-wheel drive cars, but personally I think they're the bane of my existence. Skill issue, I know. Time to make some quick cash, support my mildly destructive tendencies, and most importantly, have some fun. So first stop is the races. 4 months ago, these races were easy money. Now, not so much. Not only do we have new tracks like Drive the Distance, Highway Loop 1 and 2 and Street Rivals, but the difficulty has been cranked up and I actually respect that. Alright, so let's start at the bottom. First steps. The name says it all. This race isn't here to make you sweat, it's here to gently pat you on your back and say, you got this, buddy. For a beginner, it's a solid introduction, teaching things like maintaining a racing line, handling weight transfer, and learning that hitting the walls is in fact bad. For me though, it was about as thrilling as assembling IKEA furniture. But hey, not every race needs to be a Michael Bay explosion fest. The results, they were just a whopping 50 BeamNG bitcoins, but you know, I take what I can get. Heading into my next race, I encountered something that I first thought it seemed like reckless AI behavior. It caused me to crash spectacularly. Turns out, as I kept playing, I realized that this initial encounter wasn't just dumb luck. The AI now actually moves out of the way if it sees you approaching at high speeds from behind. So BeamNG really said, let's make AI drivers more polite than real ones. Still, the way it braked to fit into traffic left me questioning everything. One moment I'm thinking I've outmaneuvered it, and the next thing I know it's a full-blown pile-up ahead. The basic race hasn't changed much, except for some UI improvements that let you tweak racer count and time of day. Small, but welcome. So after warming up with some familiar races like the Basics race and the Pipeline Drive, it was time to step things up. Combined, they netted me a solid 4,000 BeamNG bitcoins, which, let's be honest, it's barely enough to cover my repair costs. But now let's talk about the real competition. This next race was an actual challenge. The race itself takes place on a mix of wide roads and tighter corners, meaning you can pick up speed but also have to be mindful of your braking points. Some of the turns can be deceptive. What looks like an easy bend can quickly turn into a problem if you don't set up your entry properly. There's also the occasional long straight that tempts you to floor it, but if you're not paying attention, you'll overshoot the next turn and lose valuable time. A perfect example is our friend here in the lead. It tried its best to keep the distance between us, but in the process overshot the corner and somehow spun out in a rather unfortunate position right in the middle of the tunnel entrance, because why not? Unfortunately, I had no choice but to hit it, to try to power through with minimal damage, and luckily somehow that worked. And to make things even spicier, the AI is now way more aggressive. They'll block your overtakes, defend corners like their careers depend on it, and generally make sure you earn the first place, okay? It's a huge step up from before, and honestly, I respect it. 450 BeamNG Bitcoins added to my account, I'd call that hazard pay. Next up, I had my nightmare race. Not because of the track, not because of the AI, but because of the car itself. A big, heavy, rear-wheel drive muscle car with way too much torque, all the grace of a sledgehammer, and a personal vendetta against me. Look, don't get me wrong, I respect muscle cars, okay? They're loud, they're fast, and they make you feel like an action movie hero for about 5 seconds until you realize you have no grip and you're now in a direct collision course with a guardrail. And me, yeah, I suck at driving them. I'll admit it. But this car had zero tolerance for my skill issues, okay? It was like trying to tame a bull, except the bull is made of steel, had no steering, and wants me dead. 4 straight failures. Each one more embarrassing than the last, but they were also allowing me to get a tiny bit further down the race. By my 5th attempt, I wasn't even trying to win, I just wanted to cross the finish line without looking like a complete disaster. My new goal was to survive. So I drove like I was transporting a crate of nitroglycerin, feathering the throttle like my life depended on it, shifting gears with the precision of a bomb technician, and praying that my real wheels wouldn't betray me again. I finally finished. 2nd place, not a victory, not a display of skill, just pure relief that I didn't turn my car into a scrap heap. Now, lesson learned is to never trust me with a muscle car again. On my way to the next race, High Loop 1, let's talk a little bit about what's new in update 0.34.2. West Coast USA is one of the largest maps in BeamNG, as you may already know. But it had a few issues, such as the terrain spikes, which have been smoothed out, so no more surprise launch ramps sending you into orbit. Exit and merge ramps have been also reworked, meaning you might actually take the right exit instead of recreating a high-speed police chase. But we also received vehicle fixes and tweaks, like the Bruckle 9's differential. It actually works now, because power distribution is kind of important. The Gavril T-Series air suspension is no longer auditioning for a trampoline competition and now behaves like an actual truck suspension. BeamNG's latest update brings something that completely changes the way environments are created: the biome tool. Instead of being stuck with predefined terrains, you can now blend different landscapes seamlessly. With a simple brush system, you can paint biomes directly onto the terrain, making it easier than ever to create diverse and realistic maps. And it's not just for looks. Terrain transitions affect driving physics. One moment you're cruising on a perfect asphalt, and the next your tires are sinking into deep mud, struggling for grip. It's a game changer for both modders and players who love experimenting with extreme driving conditions. Whether you're building, testing, or just setting up the most chaotic challenge possible, the biome tool adds a whole new level of creativity to BeamNG. Now let's move to Highway Loop 1. Let's set the expectations, okay? This is my first attempt. I don't know every turn, I don't know what I'm about to do, my reaction time is questionable, and let me be honest, I'll probably end up in a ditch at some point. For this race, I picked one of the fastest cars in the game. Not me personally, but the game picked it for me. Because what could possibly go wrong? The AI were more aggressive than ever. They made some bold decisions leading to multiple failed attempts, aka me launching myself into walls like it was my job. And after about 7 or 8 retries, a mix of sheer determination and blind luck finally gifted me with a clean run. The race was brutal, the throttle control had to be perfect, not too much gas, cause then I would spin out, and in the braking zones I had to use them wisely or risk turning the race into an unintentional demolition derby. The new race Highway Loop 1 is all about speed, control, and knowing exactly how much you can push before everything goes horribly wrong. The tunnels are where things get interesting. Their long, sweeping curves meant I couldn't just keep my foot planted because every time I tried, the car started losing traction. So I played it safe, easing off just enough to stay in control, only to have my opponents closing in like sharks. The second I hit open road again though, I was gone, stretching that gap before the next tunnel made me do it all over again. By lap 2, the track had already claimed the victim. I passed the crashed car, a reminder that even the pros can get it wrong. But my real battle was in the final stretch, where one racer stayed locked onto my rear bumper all the way to the finish. I kept waiting for the NASCAR effect to kick in, where my car breaking the air would give him a boost like a slingshot past me, but it never happened. I held my line, floored it to the end, and secured the win by the smallest margin. This track isn't about sharp turns or tricky sections, it's about knowing when to trust your speed and when to respect the limits of your car. After the last Highway Loop 1 race, I felt pretty good about myself. Like a seasoned pro who finally figured out how to drive without totaling their car every 5 minutes. I wanted to see the fruits of my labor and also desperately needed to repair my issue. To my surprise, I was greeted with a significantly bigger budget compared to 4 months ago, 24k BeamNG Bitcoins. And that's some serious progress right there, and I truly want to thank the devs for making these quality of life adjustments. And speaking of repairs, the cost of fixing my poor issue was way more reasonable now, at just 2.4k. 4 months ago, I would have needed to sell a kidney to afford that. These quality of life changes are doing wonders, making the career mode feel more balanced and rewarding. Fired up from these great improvements, I decided to drain even more money out of these races. Next stop, Highway Loop 2. Since Loop 1 was a cakewalk, note the sarcasm because I only crashed like 8 times before finally getting a clean run, I figured Loop 2 should be more of the same. That was until I saw the car I'd be driving, the Bruckle Bastion. Now, I've mentioned before that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with muscle cars, to put it lightly, and the Bastion is no exception. In free roam, I've had my fair share of what just happened moments, and this car has so much torque that simply breathing on the throttle can send you into an uncontrollable spin. So when I saw it pop up in the Highway Loop 2, my first thought was, well, it's going to end in tears. Out of sheer fear, I even switched the drive mode to comfort mode, which, let's be honest, is about as useful in a race as a screen door on a submarine. However, my surprise was that the ESC was actually doing its job. The updates to the Bastion's drivetrain and handling tweaks must have worked wonders because I, a non-believer, was actually racing well. Sure, the car still had the moments where it tried to remind me that it was in fact a muscle car with enough power to tow a spaceship, but overall, the stability improvements made a noticeable difference. As I was halfway through lap 2, I noticed something hilarious. One of my competitors had been claimed by the Bastion. Their car was just sitting on the side of the road, engine blown out, probably due to that unfortunate introduction to the concrete barrier. Rest in peace, my friend. The rest of the race was exhilarating and the payout was a solid 7.2k. And with our budget looking healthy, I started thinking about branching into different aspects of the career mode. Back at HQ, I took a look at the available vehicles and noticed yet another major improvement. Vehicle prices had been adjusted to be more player-friendly. Now you can actually afford a decent car from the start instead of scavenging for pocket change after every race. It kinda reminded me again of Need for Speed Underground 2, except with more permanent damage and no neon lights. I had my eye on a few options, and with 30k in the bank I could afford practically anything, well, almost anything. But did you think we were done? We needed more cash. This time we took on West Coast Circuit 1, and immediately I was blown away that we got to race on actual circuit. I truly believe that with enough development put into this game, BeamNG is gonna trump any other racing game. Forget about Forza, forget about Assetto Corsa, this is the new thing that's gonna be completely at the top of its game. With realistic physics, every part being individually crafted in every car makes a huge difference on how the car handles versus in other simulator games. The competition was fierce, okay, featuring some serious contenders. I've never driven this particular car before, so I was kinda terrified. Normally I rely on engine sounds to shift gears, and I use a Logitech G29 with 6-speed manual shifter for a full immersion, but not knowing this car's audio cues left me feeling like I was playing with earplugs in. A few minutes into the race I realized something rather shocking. Either this car was actually very responsive, or I was just that good, which, let's face it, is not the case. And after a few bumps with the competition, which I will not apologize for, I managed to take the lead. and the AI has definitely improved because they take corners like absolute pros, and any small mistake will drop you from first to third or even worse. But given my past grievances with the AI, looking at you aggressive lane changers, I fought fire with fire and used their own dirty tactics against them. I may have grinded a few gear shifts in the process, please don't tell my mechanic, but in the end I secured first place and another 7.2k in the bank. At this point I started hunting for the perfect transport vehicle for cargo deliveries, which is another great thing to do in BeamNG career mode. The car and trailer combo, which I've been a huge fan of in my previous video 4 months ago, was fine. But since we have all of this cash, I wanted something beefier, something with power. Enter the 1995 Gavril MD60, which is a new addition to the game and an absolute unit. Massive frame, huge wheels, automatic transmission, diesel powered, a true environment killer, and at just 9k, it's a total steal. Or so I thought, cause I got excited, I took it for a test drive, only to be hit with a major disappointment. There were 0 cargo storage options. I tried tweaking the setup, removing parts, anything to make it unlock, but nothing worked. So with a heavy heart, I had to resell it. Unfortunately, BeamNG's dealership system is just as ruthless as real life. 249 BeamNG bitcoins in dealership fees, 600 in sales tax, and a lovely 3.2k commercial insurance charge all out the window. And just like that, my 37k budget shrank to 32.6, and I have to admit I was quite annoyed. Then I remembered that I've seen another vehicle, the 1998 Gavril H series, which is a lifted van. It pretty much had everything: 4-wheel drive, manual transmission, yes, for me that's a feature, and a similar power to the MD60. The only downside was the premium price of 16.5k, but I wasn't about to let this one slip away, so I pulled the trigger on that purchase. After fixing up the van with a tow hitch and adding the necessary cargo boxes, it was time to dive into the revamped and quite possibly most lucrative money-making method in BeamNG career mode: cargo deliveries. Right off the bat, we're welcomed with a sleek UI that clearly sets expectations. Everything is neatly categorized: parcel deliveries, car jockey jobs, trailer hauling, material transport, and loaner vehicles if you need them. Each job gives you a clear breakdown of what to expect, the weight of the cargo, the distance, the destination, all laid out so you can make the best decision. Or just pick the one that pays the most and hope for the best. Progress levels are still a thing, but thankfully they've been also adjusted so you don't have to grind endlessly to level up. You can actually enjoy the game instead of feeling like you're stuck in a never-ending grind fest. Then there's the automatic route planner, an absolute lifesaver. It figures out the most optimal route so you don't end up taking the scenic tour of BeamNG's countryside unless you really want to. The payout system also got a major update, and now even level 1 players such as myself can make decent cash, earning close to 100 BeamNG bitcoins for a single cargo job at level 1. 4 months ago that would have been unheard of. And the satisfaction of completing deliveries, it's a chef's kiss. The sound effects, the refined UI, it all comes together for that much needed dopamine release. And don't just take my word for it, let's see what BeamNG itself has to say. After putting some serious miles on this van, I started to realize that it wasn't really my style. My biggest gripe was the steering, or better said, lack thereof. I practically had to wrestle the wheel just to get this thing pointed in the right direction. If precision is what you're after, then forget about it. I get that this is a van and not a sports car, but with this much power under the hood, you'd think it would have a bit more of a refined steering. Nope, not the case. So after much deliberation, and by deliberation I mean an intense internal monologue of do I really want to keep on suffering, I decided to sell it and hopefully make a little profit. But before pulling the trigger on that decision, I figured a change of pace might help clear my head. So enter the car jockey missions. These are simple, fun, straight to the point. You just walk into the cargo space, select car jockey, and pick a mission that fits your needs. Since I'm still at the baby step stages of career mode and my options are limited, I still found a solid gig. 3.1 kilometer drive delivery paying a nice 150 BeamNG bitcoins, not bad for a quick drive. Car jockey missions are a nice break from the chaotic world of racing. They let you take a step back, enjoy a relaxing drive, but don't get too comfortable because the AI is always lurking in the shadows. It's ready to test your patience, and if you're not careful, you will damage the vehicle, and guess what? That means wasted money. Coincidentally, the drop-off point of my car jockey mission was right where I left my van earlier. It was kind of a cute moment being reunited with the immobile beast. Sadly, the short joyride didn't change my mind and I still wanted to get rid of it, but before saying goodbye, I figured I'd take it on one last journey and packed it up full of load at the West Coast port. I was so ready to sell it, cash in well-earned profits and move on. But BeamNG had other plans. Let me be completely honest with you, I barely hit that road divider. Yet, in a series of inexplicable physics-defying events, the middle of the van got ripped apart, my windshield mysteriously shattered, and for some unknown reason I lost my back wheel? I mean, how? What I hit and what actually happened made absolutely no sense. I took this as divine intervention, a final sign that the van and I were simply not meant to be. At least I could technically say that I made a profit. We bought it for a little over 16k and sold it for 18.7, but let's not talk about the repair costs, because if I actually do the math, I might start crying. Back to the drawing board, I needed a new delivery workhorse. There were some great contenders with ample cargo space, but something just didn't click. I just didn't want a new van, I wanted something more. And then I saw it. A beautiful yellow beast. The Brockle Bastion. Memories of Highway Loop 2 came flooding back. The way it handled, the power under the hood, the tweaks made for it. It was everything I needed. And the best part, 4 months ago this car wasn't even affordable, so shout out to the devs for making this possible. Without a second thought, I went ahead and bought the Bastion. We still had some money left after our little van fiasco, so naturally I funneled it straight into a trailer purchase. Why? Because if a strategy works, you stick with it. The logic here is pretty simple. To make money, you need an efficient way to move cargo. And what's the best way to do that? Trailers. But to haul trailers, you need a truck, and trucks don't exactly come cheap. Neither are trailers for that matter. So until we can afford the big rigs, we're rolling with the next best thing, a car and a small trailer setup. The Brockle Bastion is the ideal machine for the job. It's got the torque to handle heavy loads, the horsepower to blast through deliveries at high speed, and best of all, it's ridiculously fun to drive, especially after the update. Plus, more deliveries means more experience, so we'll be climbing the ranks even faster. Honestly, I see nothing but positives here. It's a win-win-win. As always, our trusty little trailer needs to be properly equipped with cargo boxes before it's ready to hit the road. Luckily, we still have a little bit of cash left in the budget just for that. Once that's done, it's time to connect the trailer to our vehicle. The process is pretty straightforward, nothing changed here. Just approach the trailer slowly, make sure you're lined up as much as you can, and then hit L on the keyboard to make the magical connection. It's like trailer romance, really. Nothing complicated, just a smooth, easy hookup. After driving that van for what felt like an eternity, I can finally appreciate the luxury of a normal car. The steering angles on this thing are amazing. No more feeling like I'm piloting a cruise ship every time I need to turn. I also no longer have to destroy my clutch just to escape a parking lot in fewer than 250 maneuvers, so that's a win. The braking system is another massive improvement. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, this icon indicates our brake temperature. A quick pro tip is to always upgrade to disc brakes if you can. They last longer, handle heat better, and are generally the best option for any vehicle. So far, even after some pretty intense driving and braking, I haven't managed to push these into the danger zone. And at over 400 degrees Celsius at times, they still perform flawlessly. After completing a few deliveries, I made a stop at the port to stock up as much cargo as possible. I grabbed everything I could find, making sure to fill just over half of the available space. More deliveries means more experience points, so maximizing every trip is the smartest way to progress faster. With the trailer packed, I set off at full speed, eager to keep the momentum going, but the game wasted no time reminding me just how realistic it is. Each delivery has a different weight, and every bit of that weight shifts into the trailer, directly affecting how the vehicle handles. The second I floored it, I could feel the difference. Acceleration was a bit sluggier, steering felt heavier, and braking distances stretched longer than I expected. But it wasn't just something I could feel, I could see it too. The front brakes were heating up faster than the rear, a clear sign of all that extra weight pushing the car forward every time I slowed down. The temperature gauge doesn't lie. Those front wheels were doing all the heavy lifting, or most of it, and that's when I realized the upcoming bend wasn't as gentle as I had assumed. I went in too fast and the trailer wasn't having it. The weight shifted the opposite way, yanking at the back of the car just enough to throw me off balance. Instead of smoothly following the curve, I found myself fighting the steering as the whole setup veered straight into the oncoming traffic. Somehow I got lucky and the car took the hit on the side, so the wheels were fine, the engine was still running, and also the cargo was untouched. But let's be real, this was a harsh reality check. Turns out you can't just ignore the trailer weight and send it like nothing's changed. I had no choice but to finish the deliveries with the car in its sorry state. Once that was done, I finally took a moment to assess the damage. Yeah, it was pretty bad, but honestly I was just relieved that I got lucky enough to still be driving after that crash. Despite the earlier disaster, I kept pushing through deliveries and eventually hit cargo delivery level 2. And let me tell you, when the game said we could earn limitless money, they meant it. One of my favorite delivery pickup spots is the quarry, and at level 2 the payouts are already way better. One single delivery here now gives us 567 BeamNG Bitcoins, which is a massive jump. If we were doing this 4 months ago, the numbers would have looked very different. Another great spot is Spearlift Marine Logistics, down at the port. Here the trailer deliveries alone are solid, ranging from 168 to 351 BeamNG Bitcoins, and that's just at level 1. But the real jackpot is in the parcel delivery section. Just 2 items at cargo delivery level 2 bring in a whopping 2,148 BeamNG Bitcoins, just like that. An insane reward for something that's already fun to do. Obviously, I wasn't about to pass up that kind of money, so I accepted the job immediately, but this time there was a twist. The pickup location wasn't inside the port, but outside, in one of their yards. A small detail, but one that made the world feel so much more real. I had to take a dirt road under a bridge to Yard A, and even though it wasn't anything crazy, just having to go somewhere new for a pickup had me weirdly excited. Once I got the cargo, I made extra sure not to repeat my past mistakes. No reckless acceleration, no aggressive steering, just smooth, careful driving to keep the trailer in line and prevent it from spontaneously attempting a series of backflips. Somehow, despite a minor scare, the trailer landed on its wheels with barely any damage, and I took that as my cue to calm down and keep it steady. You probably thought this was going to end in another disaster, but no. This time I drove like a grandpa, took it slow, and cashed in that sweet 2.1k BeamNG Bitcoins without any further incidents. Alright, so that's where we'll wrap up this video. We covered the new and improved cargo jobs, the boosted race payouts, and the car jockey gigs, all of which makes stacking BeamNG Bitcoins way easier than before. But money making isn't the only thing that changed. This update also brought huge quality of life improvements like the revamped vehicle prices and the repair costs, which are making progression feel way smoother. No more feeling like you need to grind forever just to afford a half-decent car or fix up a wreck. Of course, this isn't everything, there are still other ways to make money, like flipping cars, but for now I wanted to focus on the best options after this update. That said, career mode is still heavily experimental, meaning anything could change, including progress wipes, which if you've played long enough you've probably been hit by. Right now we're still in uncharted territory, and the way money, repairs and vehicle prices work could shift again in the future. But if this is where things are headed, it's looking like a much more balanced and rewarding system than before. Let's just hope our wallets don't get nerfed too hard. If you found any other solid ways to farm money in this update, drop them in the comments. I might test them out and see if they're worth covering next. And lastly, if you enjoyed this and want more BeamNG guides, make sure to subscribe. I'll be covering even more ways to make money in the future updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.